And thank you to Chris for his talk before. Let's see. So let me see here. All right. Welcome. Today, I'm a web designer at the Washington Post. I graduated from Iowa State in 2000 in graphic design, and my name is Jessica Whitmer. Actually, this is 1 second, please. I guess it's in settings. I guess I'll just do it this way. It's fine.
It's fine?
Yeah. So I'm really excited to be here. I was coming back to visit family this week, and it happened that DrupalCorn was happening, so I thought I would share what we're doing at the Washington Post, since this is my school. A few things from Chris's talk that I thought was interesting is the thought of one person sharing information with a lot of people. And so I wasn't sure what to put in my deck this morning, what people were actually interested in. So maybe I can attune what I talk about this morning according to perhaps a survey of what everybody in the audience does. I did look around a little bit on the website at who were coming to this morning, and I saw that there's universities, some in-house people, which I would consider myself. I work for a brand, and everything I do relates to what they need done. So how many in-house developers, designers do we have? Okay, so I guess almost half the room, it looks like. How many freelance designers or developers? A quarter of the room. And let's see, the other, like a small studio, did I already go over that? Like 10 people creating projects for companies outside of their organization. All right, so not as many. So I'm going to gear the conversation towards how we solve business needs at the Washington Post, and I'll just gauge the room at what people want me to hang on a little bit longer. Or feel free to ask questions. I think I liked Chris's approach that it feels more like a conversation rather than me just up here talking to the room. So let me, this was just the introduction to what I was going to talk about today. So I'll start with who we are at the Washington Post, how we work, and then what we create. So the Washington Post, the brand that I work for, the company itself, thewashingtonpost.com is probably how you all get to the site or information about the news. And we have 17 million visitors to that website proper every month. We're expanding our products beyond just news into sub-outlets. And then so I'll get into what does the Washington Post have beyond just the newspaper. And then we reach about 600,000 subscriptions to the Washington Post newspaper. I work within the engineering department under a team called Information Architecture and Application Development. And we support the various teams within the organization, including human resources, advertising, marketing, new ventures, customer service, consumer marketing, and then the newsroom as well. So my role is to work within everything that makes the newspaper go out every day, and the other additional products that we're developing. So my team proper, we have about 5 back-end developers, which is Java, Spring, PHP, front-end developers, JavaScript, HTML5, CSS3, etc., and then 3 designers focused on user experience. And there's probably 5 different teams within IT working on specific areas within the Washington Post. So, hello, good morning. Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jessica Whitmer, and you can follow me on Twitter and otherwise at Color Hive. And I have business cards and such if you want to contact me later. We're always recruiting and like design, development, etc. if you want to come to Washington, D.C. And we also have like work from home and even people who don't live in Washington, D.C. So. Let me go into a little bit about how we work. One of the main reasons that we've adopted Drupal or WordPress, I wasn't sure if I was able to say WordPress at this conference, so I've really been specific to Drupal, but, and I also thought Chris's conversation about looking outside of the bubble was a nice tie-in, not only to just CMSs, but also design and business strategy, always looking at what everybody else is doing to give you insight into what you might be building. So when we approach projects, we look at three primary components. So I know somebody was saying that they're asked a lot from the business that we want this and we want this feature and it needs to have a map and I need to have it on my mobile device, and they'll come to everybody with like a zillion business requirements, and how do you manage all of that? The way that we've had success is in looking at these three primary areas. What is the brand, the message, and the organization, and can you give us a mission statement as to what you're trying to do? And secondly, the business. What's your business model? How are you planning to make money? What does the feature, what's the goal of the feature? And then secondly, not only just talking to the business about what they want, but also saying who the audience is. What is this feature that you're, or website or app that you're trying to create? Who's the end users? And then secondly, can we go and talk to those people who are going to be using this site and see if it's actually valuable to them? So prioritizing along those three areas has given us a lot of strength. And I should have put in a few slides as to, you'll see products in the market that were not user tested or taken a survey or talked about. Like, I think right now they have refrigerators with a Facebook button on them now. So the value of a refrigerator with Facebook probably isn't as valuable to that function of that product. So does anybody want to expand or have a conversation about what challenges they're having within their organization of prioritizing business requirements? Or not? Well, we'll come back to it. So I just listed out like high-level thoughts on how we approach business at the Washington Post. I should say that my role started off as visual design, turned more to user experience and working with the business, not only to figure out the colors, but then also working closely with the developers to define how that might translate into Drupal. So some aspects are creating a diverse team. Your team should always, in my opinion, have three core people: the business, the tech, have a dev resource, and a design. Everybody at every meeting should be available at those meetings. Establish meetings and rhythm discussion and individual roles. So we have a standing meeting. It might sound simple enough, but it's right now called Agile methodology, but we meet for 15 to half hour every day to say what everybody's working on and what they plan to finish tomorrow. Google Docs have been our savior. Everybody's able to collaborate and move information fast. And then when we start getting into the idea and the concept, it's sketching. The developers and myself are looking into Drupal, what modules and block, how are we going to lay out the page? Is it going to be a block? What's the taxonomy? So it's kind of bridging all of the languages into one solution. So the design needs to know how to speak to development, and development needs to know how to speak to business, etc. So collaborative environment, the development starts while design is still happening, and the business strategy is aligning with all of us at the same time. So here's some process work just showing that we're sketching on whiteboards, on paper. This, I don't know if you can see it this well, but just major brainstorm sessions regarding what we're all talking about and capturing everything in fluid, fast format. And then once we start to refine those sketches, we'll get into wireframes to kind of start letting the entire team see and understand what the vision might be. And the way I relay it back to the business is this is a wireframe acts as the blueprint for the website. So when speaking to, and I don't mean to categorize all three areas, but I do think it's important that you let the business people understand what you need from them, and then the dev and the design. So this is a blueprint to the business team. Like as if you're going to build a house, we just need to understand all of the rooms and making sure people get from point A to point B on what their path is. Just keywords. So I think that this is one of the most important areas of a business strategy, and what has really helped us, along with what Chris was saying of us getting outside of the building, outside of our bubble box of what we want to do and what we think everybody will love. We start to create personas so that we design according to a net of, say, 5 key people that we think, key categories of people that we think are going to be using this product. So in this slide, I'm showing that John, as a sample, is an advertiser. He's this X age and his occupation. Maybe a quote. Let's see. So this is the advertising bucket, and this website, we were going to create an area for people to upload and apply for contests. So we're going to get advertising partners to sponsor those contests. So how do we get advertisers interested in that product? And then we think about features that he would need, and then perhaps what a lawyer might be interested in, and what a social butterfly might be interested in. Anyhow, I'll give a resource where you could download this template. It's been very helpful for us. This screen is me starting to look at all of the, in this case it's the same thing, it's a contest and events website, and they said we want a contest and events website where people can apply and win things. So we start to break down what kind of contests they're going to start to have. So you're going to have a contest where you can upload a photo. You're going to have a contest where you can vote. You're going to have a contest where you can, I'm trying to think of another sample. But what are the unique content types? So then that starts to speak to Drupal, it starts to speak to the business, and it starts to speak to the design. And this is just a sample of a Google spreadsheet where we have outlined all of the steps that it's going to take to finish this project, and then assigning volunteers and our % complete along the way. So set up the dev environment, website analysis, information architecture, then we're going to get into the design, and then the development, QA, and launch. And then the steps all along the way of that. That keeps us on task and keeps the business on task of knowing what we're doing. Okay, so now I'll show a sample of what we've created using Drupal at the Washington Post, and why we love Drupal. And I can share with you why I personally love Drupal is that it's allowed me to quickly create designs and change them according to what the market or the business needs. we used to have to sit through months of presentations by enterprise application CMSs saying, if you buy this CMS, we'll answer all of your dreams. So then it'd take forever to install it, and then like 2 years later there was no support, the website was hanging, and it turned out to not be what they said it was. A lot of money wasted and frustrations on all levels. So for us, Drupal has given us a lot of business value. And over the past 5 years, we've adopted Drupal to be our CMS of choice within our team. And the nice thing, and so these are websites that we've created in-house using Drupal. The item I also liked about what Chris said is the knowledge share. Another reason we've adopted Drupal is that we can get talent from the development community. We've had a lot of turnover at the Post, and so recruiting developers has been challenging, but when we say we're using Drupal at the Post, people get excited and they come in and they can ramp up very quickly. Yeah.
So a question, when you were talking about the team, you said that the application development people were actually Java, Spring, developers and so on. You listed these sites. So am I correct that WashingtonPost.com is actually on Java and so on, but these satellite or other sites are using Drupal?
That's partially true. The WashingtonPost.com proper does run on a large enterprise application called Methode, and it actually has its own language. But we use Java for a lot of our legacy systems, as well as other things that need more robust development needs. So that's where the Swiss Army knife title came in. We'll use Drupal where Drupal requirements are needed, and then plug into these larger Java needs. So it just is plugged in. So I can show you a few samples of where we've used it that way. Anybody else have questions, thoughts? Okay. But along what Chris was saying is that we had one developer, and he actually he signed up for Build a Module, and that's where he started at the Post, because we had lost a lot of our Drupal resources, so that was kind of exciting. And he wanted to come because he's like, oh, Chris, I learned everything I know from him. I'll have to tell Chris that. So this is a sample of the advertising website that we recently redesigned in Drupal and rebranded, worked with the business to say, well, one of the challenges was that the previous site had outgrown itself. It was built with Rhythmix, a big enterprise CMS, and it was only able to be updated in IE, or an old browser of IE, so the business could never update the information. I don't know, it got bad. So, not to mention that the products and the offerings of the advertising department had changed over time. So one of the steps that we take when we're defining a website will be to create the information architecture. And so how I relate this to working with the development team is they start to think of the taxonomy of the site. So taxonomy equals information architecture in a way, oftentimes. And that also taxonomy equals business rules. So we have a page where all of the deadlines for submitting your ad is displayed. And on the Drupal side, we have all of the deadline times that the business themselves can manage as those change. And I would say the analogy is views equals extending the brand vision. So the views allow your site to have multiple visual pages, but just having the information in one place. So this page is a good representation of all of the additional offerings at the Washington Post that we're extending. and content types equals unique business requirements. So now that I'm starting to get the lingo, I'm getting the business involved and getting the development team, we're starting to really get a rhythm of developing quickly to what the business wants. I also used, on this site proper, 960 GS and was able to quickly stand the site up using that as the foundation, so that, yeah, it was just saved us a lot of time. And grid systems are good, so it's just like perfect. And we also use the calendar module on here, so we just loved it. Everything that we do, we just always resort back to where does it make sense to pull in Drupal. Newspapers and education, this was the pre-design. It was maybe designed in like 1996, so it was like the resolution and the size was small. So we kind of joked that it was like mobile friendly before mobile was necessary. The redesign is using it as if it looks like it's from the Washington Post, but it's actually a Drupal backend, using views and blocks to lay out the page. So this is also very handy for us that we're meeting business requirements, staying in line with the brand, and staying agile and quick to what they're wanting and needing. We've solved it as well with Washington Post Live. It was a new division to the Washington Post. They're finding that people actually want to have conversations and come to real events outside of just reading it in the paper or on the news. So they'll host conferences at the Washington Post where you can buy tickets. The requirement of this project was that the videos needed to be live streamed because they are oftentimes sponsored by an ad or multiple advertisers, so it became a little too close to church and state. So we needed to make sure that the videos were live to anybody who wanted to come, not only if they had a ticket or not.
What solution do you use for the live stream?
I think it's Uwala now. Uwala. Mm-hmm. So that's nice. We can pull in the URL or the stream needed on the Drupal on the back end, and it's shown on the page. This is just a sample of how Drupal's allowed us flexibility. So agile business solutions. We have on the Washington Post proper, the top left is the slideshow being pulled from Method, the enterprise application, and then we're using a JSON file to pull into the URL field to give it a different look and feel on our site proper, if that makes sense. I'm not sure, but that's how we didn't have to go with. So the enterprise WashingtonPost.com application has like a backlog of like a zillion needs. So they can sometimes come to us to say, can you work on something quickly to help us stand up this new product? And we'll say, yes, Drupal can help us with that. This is a sample of the section of the website where you manage your account. If you click on your name in the top left, the way that Drupal's helped us in this area is customer service. We're letting the customer service representative do a search on the email name. So you call in, or mostly call-ins, or you send an email. I can't change my email address on the Washington Post, or I don't know where the email address is to change. So the CSR search is going to look at doing a lookup in the back end and allowing that representative to simulate that end user to change their password. So this is a sample of kind of the Swiss Army knife solution where we're using Drupal as the admin tool to go and do the lookups in the back to retrieve. And this is the contest website that I was speaking of earlier, where they wanted a website where they could host contests and events. And and this is all just Drupal allowing them to use web forms to manage the files or the fields that are displayed. Maybe some contests they want to collect the address, some they just want to collect the email, but creating a template or a view that would allow for that. So this is a sample of how you would apply to get a ticket to the Nationals contest. This was another, I think, exciting sample of how we used it. They had America's Next Greatest Pundit. If you submitted I don't know, an article to the Post, you could win the opportunity, I don't know if win, you would have the opportunity to be a writer at the Post for a month. So we used it for voting so that the admin could go and log into Drupal to see how many votes were coming into that web form and monitor it that way. And they didn't have to, like, I don't know how they do it before, to see who's in the lead and who's behind. Another way I'd like to push this the next step would be real-time views for the general public to see the votes. Although there's a lot of legal, so I would say there's also another component. You should always have legal involved with everything you do, so that once you have the whole site designed and developed, that they don't come in and say, you can't do that. So that's also where requirements come into play. And so that's essentially why I'm here today, just to share a little bit about how I worked at the Post using Drupal. Let's see, a few of the references that I would reference. Smashing Magazine, WashingtonPost.com/innovations, AIGA for design, Adaptive Path, KONIGI. I don't know how to say that, but that's the website that I used for those personas. They have a nice template you can download to modify for that. BusinessDesignTools.com is a new site I've discovered, and they have a lot of tools for you to say, it's mostly, I think, a lot about who are the end users and what do they need, and bringing those questions to the table when you're speaking to the business. Fast Company or Fast Co-Design. I went to a nice conference, Agile UX NYC, but they have a lot of nice references on there. And it's talking a little bit about how to be agile in design and development, which I think Drupal has allowed us to do. Designing Interfaces is one of my favorite books, and Designing for the Digital Age will give you a lot of insight into managing business requirements and end user needs. So that's what I had today. I'm not sure if I covered what you were looking for, but I can expand on lots of other things. Yes. Uh-huh. I guess that would be another bucket I should have put into the circle of having at the table, but we try to get the content owners and writers or editors into the sites as soon as possible. So once we go to QA, I'll start training them on how to get that content in, and then we'll move from QA to production, and we'll either have production be actually where they're just maintaining and updating from that point moving on, and then QA will be outdated, and then we'll move back to QA at that point and overwrite everything in QA. Or else we on the contest site we have the preview, like the published or not published version of the site. So those are the two ways that we've managed content, getting it into the site. Yeah, once we get to that point where it's more painful to push from QA to production, we'll just say we're in production now and you're editing live, real time. But then once we move from dev to QA and then QA has more features than our production, we'll roll back just the content, but not the features, and then roll back to production. So I don't know if there's a clean and dry answer for that one. No, we don't have, we have our own makeshift. Yeah. Yes? What do I use to create wireframes? I use it almost everything and anything. I prefer now these days to just sketch, but I'll use Adobe Illustrator, OmniGraffle. What else do I use? Like in the case of Washington Post ads redesign, I actually used Photoshop because it was pixel perfect to what they were going to develop, and then that translated nicely to the design component. I think you can use anything that you're familiar with, but those are and InDesign I like. Mm-hmm.
Your teams that are set up to develop the sites initially, are they responsible for bug fixes or maintenance things after the site's live?
Yeah. Our team sees everything from concept to completion and then managing it. So in a way, they develop it as best they can so that they don't have to maintain it in the end. So that's another measure of success that we've used for Drupal, is that we don't get that many calls. We have to train them probably more than we do for WordPress on where to go for things, but if we set up the taxonomy clear enough, it's easy enough with the drop down for them to find what they need. And we also build with, they're going to want a lot of changes in the future, or is this ask something that they're going to want to change? If the answer is yes, we'll figure out a way that it'll be dynamic.
So are these all sites separate installs, or do you do any type of multi-site setups?
We are going to now start working on one that we can update, but no, they're all just separate. But it's becoming, now that we have so many under our belt, we're thinking we need like a system. Yeah, we have to update all of them every time, so that's not efficient. I worked at a few, I've worked, after the Washington Post, I did an internship. Well, I met my husband in Charlotte at an architecture firm where I did environmental graphics. I did an internship at Dennis Publishing, and I worked at Razorfish in Boston, which was about a year there, and I worked at three years at a small design studio called Swim Design, where we did kiosks for the Brooklyn Museum of Art and American Institute of American Indian. So I've kind of dabbled in a little bit, but I'm starting to find that I really like the in-house component of design. 5 years ago at the Washington Post, we had some major enterprise, like every time we wanted to do a website, other teams were thinking, oh, we got to go to IT and they're going to make us sit through like 5 months of review and analysis, and so we just started to do it. We said, we can do this quickly. We know we can, so.
What version of Drupal do you use, or multiple versions?
Multiple versions, but the latest ones are 7. The post-fun, I think, is 6. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you also, so you're a designer primarily?
Yeah.
Do you also, are you responsible for like actually giving it a website?
Not yet, but I hope to be more into the theming.
Well, I find myself, because I design and I also am responsible for the
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that I have to theme it, I find myself kind of pigeonholed as far
Yeah.
And I just wondering, if you have design or viewers come back and say, this design looks great, this property.
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten into that, but I'd like to. Mm-hmm. We don't have a user experience specific group, so I did create those from, and really in the end it was really my best knowledge of what I was finding were being told to me through the requirements. But you can have a whole get out of the building, go talk to real people effort. Mm-hmm.
As a follow-up to the discussion about the theming, can you talk about the brand requirements and guidelines? And are they rather strict, or are you finding sometimes you come in conflict with what you're trying to do, how it could be implemented?
We have, I guess, 3 different design departments within the Washington Post, and I think there for a while we were very siloed, and perhaps each designer was approaching each challenge as to how they wanted to do it. But we're trying to streamline and organize. I don't say that we have a strict brand policy, which I think we should actually, but when I approach it, I just try to align to what the overall brand is doing and stay as close to that as possible. The Washington Post ads redesign is a good sample of, or a sample of how I think we solve that nicely. So those are all the different brands. So how do you create a cohesive visual amongst them all to tie them to one brand? So we looked at photos and other things, but found like this icon was a nice solution. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The proliferation of responsive design,
Mm-hmm.
you guys look to wireframe mock-ups for mobile approach.
So we are working right now on a careers redesign that we're going to use. I can't think of the theme as the base, but it's responsive by default. So we want to take the mobile first approach. I don't think that that's really how we're designing just yet, but every decision that we make, we are thinking about how does it relate to the mobile device. Especially on, I think it's also going to come into play on the profile, on the page where you manage your accounts. As we get into a diversified product model where you're going to have to manage not only your newspaper but your iPad subscription or your other products that you might subscribe to, you're going to want to do that on your mobile device. So how does this page look on your mobile? So we used Drupal, for instance, on this page, just for the text. So we extracted out all the sentences and let that be editable within Drupal to feed in, so that when they say, could you change that sentence actually is being pulled from Drupal. The other pieces of the page are being pulled from various areas of the site or applications. But then the CSR, how you look up an end user, is the admin of the customer service is Drupal. I'm not entirely sure about that. We do manage our own servers, but I do know we have some in the Amazon cloud as well. So I'm not sure. I guess maybe 2 more questions, if anybody has anything. I'll put my contact information up. I'd be more than happy to connect with anybody. I know another nice information sharing site is Skillshare.com. They have like videos of people sharing information that I've considered and I should do. Let me see. So main takeaways I would say would be to get out of the building, talk to end users, don't just talk to the business requirements people, and ask and question them, like, where is this requirement coming from? Really, how many people are going to use it? And is it really necessary? So feature creep and get to know your backlog. Love the backlog. Just say, we'll get to it at another release. We hear you. And then as your requirements are managed on that backlog, you'll get new requirements once you go out to production. So then they can prioritize and have decisions made upon what the site needs to be. But get something out there quick, see what the market is saying, get feedback, and then manage it that way. But you're designing and creating products for the public, not just for the room within the building. Okay, thank you.